Okay, let's dig into this. It's one of those thoughts that just kind of stops you in your tracks, isn't it?
Hmm.
Imagine somehow being aware and seeing your own body laid out.
Yeah.
That image the source gives us, it's so visceral, unsettling.
Hmm.
What does a dead person actually feel then? After the spirit is supposedly gone.
The pain, relief.
Or just silence. Or maybe, like the source hints, something. Well, something more complex, maybe even terrifying.
It's hard to even wrap your head around from.
Exactly. And that deep, chilling uncertainty, that's what we're diving into today.
Right.
We're tackling maybe the biggest universal mystery, what happens after we die.
Yeah.
And we've got some fascinating sources here. We're looking at religion, at science, and ancient myths, too.
And our job in this deep dive using the material you've shared is really to try and, cut through some of the noise.
Okay.
We want to pull out the key insights, the nuggets of knowledge from these really different viewpoints, lay them out for you.
Kind of navigate this huge unknown together using these different maps.
Precisely. Trying to make sense of it all.
Absolutely. So, where do you even start with a question this huge? It affects literally everyone.
That's true.
Let's start with the view that maybe gives the most detailed picture right from the moment of death. That's heavenly religions, right? Specifically looking at what our sources say from Islam.
Okay. What's really striking there right away is the idea that death, it's not presented as an ending. Not at all.
Not just lights out.
No, it's framed as the start, the beginning of a completely new journey, the afterlife. It's a transition, not a stop.
So there's an immediate experience, something happens right away.
That's exactly what the sources describe. Those first moments after the spirit leaves the body, the soul is tested, by two angels, Munkar and Nakir. And they ask these really fundamental questions.
Like what?
Who is your Lord? What is your religion? Who is your prophet? It's like an immediate, direct spiritual accounting.
Wow. Intense right out of the gate. And then the sources talk about something physical, or maybe spiritual physical, in the grave itself.
Yes, the pressure of the grave. That comes up quite a bit in the material.
For sure.
Described as this intense pressure, a squeezing that almost everyone experiences.
Everyone.
Well, the source includes this really powerful quote attributed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It says, basically, if anyone could have been spared this pressure, it would have been Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, who was a really important figure.
Implying that almost nobody is spared?
It implies it's incredibly intense and near universal, a significant part of that initial stage.
So it's not just a judgment, but a sensation, too, a visceral thing.
Seems that way, yeah. But then the experience really splits. It depends heavily on how you lived your life.
Right, the good versus the bad, so to speak.
Exactly. That's the key fork in the road the sources detail.
Right.
For people considered righteous, good people, the experience is totally different.
How so?
They're said to see angels, but these angels have bright white faces. They bring burial shrouds, but from paradise. There's a beautiful smell.
Okay.
And crucially, a window or a door to paradise is open for them. They get a glimpse of what awaits.
A preview of bliss. And for the others.
A complete stark contrast. Terrifying, really.
Okay.
For those considered bad in these accounts, the angels they encounter have dark, black faces. The smell is foul, repulsive. And instead of a window to paradise, they get a window open to hellfire.
So immediate consequences.
Very immediate. It's a clear depiction of your spiritual state based on your life, unfolding right there in the grave, moments after death.
That's an incredibly detailed picture from that faith perspective, a whole journey mapped out.
It really is.
Okay. So now let's completely shift gears. Let's pivot to a totally different way of looking at this, science.
Right.
What can science, based on observation and evidence, actually tell us about what happens? Does a dead person feel anything?
Well, this is where we hit a fundamental boundary, right?
Yeah, a limit.
A definite limit. Science is amazing at understanding the physical world, but this specific question, does a dead person feel something consciously beyond biology? Science can't definitively answer that. Not yet, anyway.
It can't measure a soul or spiritual states with its tools?
Not with empirical data, no.
Yeah.
But the sources are careful to point out what science does observe, what happens to the body right after the heart stops.
Okay. What do we know?
We know cells don't all die instantly. When the heart stops pumping blood, there's still some metabolic activity for a bit.
And the brain, that's the big one for consciousness, isn't it?
It is. And the brain does stay active for a very short window after the heart stops, usually seconds.
Seconds.
Yeah. And the sources mention within that brief time, there might be some final flickers, flashes of consciousness, maybe just residual activity as the system shuts down.
Is this where those stories come in? People revived after a cardiac arrest, near-death experiences, NDEs.
Exactly. That's highly relevant here. The sources compile studies, reports from people who were clinically dead, heart stopped, then revived.
And they report strange things.
Very often, yes. Common themes emerge. Feelings of lightness, floating, seeing a bright light is very common. Hearing sounds, sometimes music, that aren't actually there. These accounts pop up again and again.
Which leads to theories trying to explain it, right? Like that hidden consciousness theory the source mentioned.
It does, yeah. Those NDE reports are basically the foundation for that theory.
What's the idea behind it?
It proposes that maybe, just maybe, consciousness isn't entirely tied to the physical brain. That it could persist, maybe just for a short time, even after the body stops functioning in the way we understand.
But there's always a but with science on this topic.
A big but. And the sources are really clear on this critical point. While the theory is interesting, and it tries to make sense of the NDEs, there is absolutely no conclusive empirical evidence right now.
No proof.
No proof that consciousness actually continues after death in that way. Science can describe the body shutting down. It can collect these really fascinating NDE reports, but it can't definitively say, yes, you still feel something. That gap remains.
Okay, so science gives us the biology of dying, these intriguing but unproven reports from the brink. A very different picture from the religious one.
Vastly different.
So let's turn to our third angle from the sources, ancient myths. How did people way back when try to understand this? What stories did they tell?
Myths are fascinating here. They often feel like humanity's earliest attempts to give shape to this ultimate unknown, don't they?
Projecting their own values and fears onto it.
Exactly. Externalizing the mystery, and you see incredible variety.
Ancient Egypt always comes to mind first for me. Their afterlife stuff was so elaborate.
Oh, incredibly elaborate. In Egyptian belief, the soul didn't just cease to be, it went on a journey, a whole journey of the underworld.
Not just wandering, though. There was a point to it.
Definitely a point. It culminated in judgment. The soul had to appear before Osiris, the god of the dead, the afterlife. And the key event was the weighing of the heart.
Ah, the scales. The heart versus the feather.
Precisely. The heart, representing the person's deeds and conscience, weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the feather of truth, justice, cosmic order.
And if your heart was heavy, full of bad deeds, I guess.
If it tipped the scales, heavy with sins. Well, it was grim. Your heart was devoured.
Devoured. By what?
By this terrifying monster called Amit. Part crocodile, part lion, part hippo. A real nightmare creature. And that was it. Obliteration. The second death.
Wow. Talk about motivation to be good.
Absolutely.
Okay, what about the Greeks? Their underworld seems different. Less focus on obliteration, maybe.
It feels distinct, yeah. For the Greeks, souls had to cross a boundary. Usually the river Styx.
With Charon the ferryman.
Typically, yes. You needed to pay him, traditionally. Then you'd enter Hades, the realm of the dead, ruled by the god Hades.
Yeah.
And there, again, judgment.
Judgment leading to?
Either torment, maybe in Tartarus for the really wicked, or a kind of peaceful, if perhaps shadowy rest, or even bliss in the Elysian fields for heroes and the virtuous. So, still judgment and consequences, but a different landscape, different figures.
And the sources also mention shamanism and some Native American myths. What's the feel there?
Yeah, those often present a slightly different flavor. Maybe less about a strict final judgment and more about transition and connection.
How so?
In some traditions, you might have a guide, like a sacred bird, accompanying the soul.
A guide.
Yeah, leading it on a journey, often through symbolic places, mountains, clouds to reach the land of the spirits or the ancestors. It feels more like a passage, rejoining the spiritual continuum.
Interesting. So less about reward and punishment, more about going home.
In some interpretations, yes.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of narrative focus.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. We've seen heavenly religions with these detailed accounts of immediate tests, spiritual consequences, even physical sensations. Then science hitting its limits, but giving us the biological facts of shutdown, plus these really compelling NDE reports, even if they aren't proof.
Right, the boundary is clear there.
And then the ancient myths offering these rich symbolic stories, journeys, judgments, transitions from Egypt, Greece, other cultures.
Yeah, incredibly diverse ways of trying to map out what happens after we breathe our last. Different lenses, different answers, sometimes conflicting ones.
But all trying to give some shape, some meaning to that ultimate unknown.
Exactly.
And yet, despite all of it, all these detailed beliefs, scientific observations, ancient stories. That one question we started with, the really personal one.
It still hangs there, doesn't it, for every single one of us?
Yeah. The question that's kind of lurking behind every single one of these accounts.
What will I feel when I die?
And the final thought from our sources, maybe the most honest and maybe the most unsettling.
Is that we just won't know the answer? Not really.
Until we're them. Until it's our turn.
Leaves you thinking, doesn't it?
It really does. The ultimate personal mystery.